Welcome back to the second part of our interview today. I'm Susie Verde. This is Wisdom Chats, and today we have a wonderful guest. His name is Rob Williams, and he is the name behind Psych-k. And in the first part of this show today, we were giving you some very good ideas of how and why Psych-k works the way it does, and believe me, it does. And so you might want to have a look at part one, and as well as you may want to continue with us at part two, where we are going to explore the usage of Psych-k not only on the individual level, on the personal level, but also on the collective level, the community level, the planetary level, and who knows, beyond. And there are some very deep and important applications of Psych-k at those levels. And a lot of us these days are coming from a space of fear and anxiousness as we walk the path of a lot of change, basically, and that is creating a lot of stress, collective stress, I would say, as well as individual stress. So, anyways, I would like you to join us to the second part of our show today, and to hear what Rob has to share with us about all those things that are happening in the world. So, thank you, Rob. Thank you for being here. The second part of our show today. So. Yes, the world is going through difficult times, and I know you've been very passionate about how it is that Psych-k can be like a catalyst for collective change of beliefs and really help people speed the process of opening consciousness so that they can be making better choices and living better lives in the midst of troubled days. So, can you share a little bit about all that with us? What's your view of what's happening now in the world?
Well, when you talk about the change that's going on, I think of Mahatma Gandhi, who said simply, "Be the change you want." And that's exactly where the power is, Susie, in my opinion, is that individuals are mostly unaware of how powerful they are and influence in the collective consciousness of humanity, as an example. And there is a collective. It's like, instead of one mind, it's all the minds working at the same time. If you think of it in a computer analogy, we have a thought. That thought doesn't stay inside our craniums. It's actually an energy field. So it exits our mind and is essentially uploaded to the collective consciousness, like the hard drive of your computer. And also, the other thing that happens is all of this collective, all the people's thoughts and all of the energy field that's being created is downloaded to us as well. So we are receiving, oftentimes, what is the collective consciousness input, not just our own beliefs and not just our own outcomes and our own stuff, but the stuff of everybody else, what's going on, the chaos in thinking. And I think that's absolutely where we are. But it's scary for most people because we sort of are, can I say, we're big fans of certainty. We would love to know, oh, this is going to happen for certain, and I'm safe here, and there's nothing unpredictable about it. And our subconscious mind, it's one of its main jobs is to keep you safe. And so when it sees change, it's always leery of change. That's why Psych-k is so, I think, so useful a tool, is because it prepares the mind to receive a new idea without all this pushback, with all the resistance to the idea. So that's why it's so important in the world that people know how to manage their minds. Well, there's lots of classes out there for money management, but not very many that are effective mind management tools.
Correct.
To me, that's the ultimate management asset you have. It's not how much money you have. It's not how pretty or handsome you look. It's not your intellect. It's none of that. It's about how to manage your mind in a world that appears quite chaotic and quite chaos-driven right now. The good news about the chaos is it's the thing that happens before things change. That if things get weird enough or tough enough or painful enough, that's usually when most people step into being open to change. Until they reach that point where the fear of changing is less than the fear of staying the way they are, change. And so I think that's why things have to become, for most people, very uncomfortable. Economically, spiritually, physically, in our society, the rules of society have to be, they're starting to wobble, and get to the place where you're not sure what's real and what's not, and what's going to happen next, and political world and the wars in the world, all that stuff just look like, oh, it's all overwhelming. I think a really important thing to realize is each of us makes a vote like it were an election. We make a vote every day with our thoughts about how we want life to be, and we upload that to the collective consciousness. So it's all the more important. The most powerful thing you can do is to get your own act together, to align your consciousness with your own divine GPS, as I mentioned in the last segment. GPS meaning greater personal self. So when you step into your guidance system of spirituality and you start to download that and process it as a set of thoughts and behaviors in three-dimensional reality, you then push into the field of consciousness this awareness of the divine. And the more people that experience that awareness of the divine, the fewer wars, the fewer bad things are going to happen in the world, the stuff we are right now stuck with.
I love what you just said about, downloading information that's coming from your GPS, because basically it's like, there's a very, very famous teacher, Brazilian teacher called Chico Xavier. He used to say, there's no use for knowledge and love if it's not expressed in the world. It needs to be expressed. If it's not expressed, it's basically not important. It's irrelevant almost. And so I think it's another way of saying what you just referred to in terms of, translating into action and beliefs, because then what it is you're becoming the change you want to see, but not because you're thinking you want to become the change, but because you're like inspired and completely reprogrammed in a way, so that you can be very clear of what that change can look like. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's about congruency at the subconscious level with your conscious desires. In other words, your conscious mind reads the books, thinks about things, decides what's worth wanting, does all the things that it's supposed to do, looks at the world and says, that's not working for me, and I don't want more of that, I want more of this. And it's the discernment part. That's what your conscious mind does. Your subconscious mind doesn't do discernment. It just runs the programs it already has until you can get to it in a way it understands and write new software. The good news is all of the software that you have from the subconscious level of your mind is in one level or another rewritable software. You're not stuck with it. The conclusions you drew when you were a child and the people that influenced you before you had any filters, you can look at that and say, oh, that's not serving me anymore. I'd rather have this instead. And as soon as you can go there, you can do Psych-k. Because Psych-k really depends on you looking at your life, deciding you want something different, putting it in a format of a statement, as an example, that is user-friendly to the subconscious mind and downloading it there. So essentially what you're doing is taking your current level of wisdom, which might be much greater than when you were 10 years old or even 20 years old or 30 years old, and now updating your software. So it's now running on a higher frequency at an automatic level of spiritual awareness.
Yes.
If you do this, what's really exciting to me about it is that in the scheme of things, quantum physically speaking, not that many people have to get there. There's a relatively small number of people, when you become coherent in the field with your own divine essence and your own divine nature, that will affect all the other people. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. In Psych-k, the more people do Psych-k and come to this spiritual place of peace in them, becoming the change, in other words, then all of a sudden their influence is exponential.
Yes.
The field changes.
One thing that you also have been referring to a lot, which I think it's so important, Rob, is the fact that even though we are talking about individual awakening, the whole concept of awakening by itself, it's not so much geared towards individuality, but to interconnectedness. So if you think like, a real awakened individual is able to accomplish so much and to actually be so more clear about personal goals, and yet it's almost like the personal goals are not the ultimate goal, because you realize that there's so much more around you and others around you, and that we're all part of the same field in a way. And then that leads to, almost like the inevitable conclusion that we jump to the sphere of the collective. So awakened individuals connected by a field that creates like a collective reality, right?
Right. The fear of the collective, I think, is very misguided. It's like having a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. We talked a little bit about those two in the last section, but the left hemisphere gives you a sense of individuality. The right hemisphere gives you a sense of connection and belonging.
Right.
If you lose your sense of individuality, you appreciate it as an individual, but you also realize it's part of a collective. It's not either or. That's old thinking in terms of Newtonian physics. It's this or it's that. In today's quantum world, it's not that anymore. The reality is it's this and it's that. So it's a both and, not an either or world. And we're still asking either or questions and expecting answers to them that's in either or format. Well, the real answers, the spiritual answers, are both and. It's yes, it's this, and it's that, not yes, it's this or it's that.
Yeah. Ideally, it could influence the whole universe of human activities, and one of them would be politics, and the other one would be the economy, and as we see these days, both of those arenas are pretty, in challenging really points. We see world politics going crazy, the leaders almost like moving towards very radical, positions, people becoming very opposed, holding very opposed opinions against each other's radicalism, separatism, hate, and the economy as well. So for me, the idea of, bringing a solution that is coming from a higher level, it almost like becomes the only solution, because how it is that we're going to find any solution for the bigger conflicts we're seeing today in the world, if it is that we are not going to bring in new inspiration from a higher source of wisdom. Does that make sense?
Well, it not only makes sense to me, it made sense to Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
Einstein said, very simply, you can't solve a problem from the level of the thinking that created the problem. So when I look at politics and I look at the economy and economists and I look at the banking industry and the money people and all of that, I don't see the problem in politics as well. I don't see the problem as being solved with the same level of thinking that created the problems we see. Einstein said you have to transcend that thinking. You have to get out of the box, or whatever you want to call it. There has to be a high order of thinking, higher than what created the problems, to solve them. Now, I'm telling you, and all of your listeners, that believe it or not, you are the change we seek. We are the people that need to make the change, and we don't have to go out necessarily and run for office or go out and do anything immediately. Ultimately, you will have behaviors that are necessary in order to help make change. But if you don't condition the field before you do that, you run into the worst of duality. You referred to this separation and oppositional thinking. This is old thinking. This is what's tearing everything apart. It's because we see it as either or, not both and. In effect, Susie, you and I are one. We're one being. We express differently. You express your divinity as Susie. I express mine as Rod. In the Mayan culture, for example, they have a beautiful greeting. It's In Lakesh. And In Lakesh, translated into English, is, hello, I'm another you. So the very first thing that happens when they meet and they say In Lakesh, like we say hi, which has in English, almost no spirituality to it whatsoever. But if you look at other languages, the Mayan language in Lakesh, you look at the Hawaiian language, aloha. Aloha translated into English, breaking the word apart. Alo means spirit, and ha means breath. So when you say aloha, I recognize the divine breath in you. In India, namaste, the divinity in me recognizes and honors the divinity in you. There are Grüß Gott in German, it means greetings God. These greetings from ancient cultures have been around a lot longer than, say, the country I happen to live in, which is the United States. Not very old country. But in the older countries, they had recognized spirit first and then talk about something else. In the Maori culture in New Zealand, they have their own greetings. The ancient cultures knew that what connected us, regardless of how the color of our skin or our language choice or how we looked or whatever, the first thing was to acknowledge the spiritual connection. That's where the connection, that's where the healing takes place. It's not, I'm not you, I'm not you. It's no. What I call it from a psychological point of view is the illusion of separation disorder.
The biggest disease humankind is facing these days is the illusion of separateness. This is a very core teaching from many spiritual traditions. From the Course in Miracles to the Buddhism tradition, to the Christian tradition, when Jesus says, "My Father and me are one." And love thy neighbor like you'd love thyself. So there's a whole amazing body of knowledge out there, religious and non-religious, that points to this direction. So how it is that you came to this conclusion through your practice and knowledge of Psych-k through during the last 30 years?
Yeah, I was going to say it took 30 years. Paying attention, I think, mostly during my 14 years as a professional psychotherapist and people coming to see me and telling me their stories. And what I noticed, Susie, was that the people changed. There were males, there were females, their names were different, and the backgrounds were different. But basically, their stories were pretty much the same. Most of us have the same hopes, desires, fears, aspirations, and so on. And I started to see the pattern. And the pattern underlying the core pattern of people's individual problems was this sense of being separate, feeling disconnected from everything, from everyone, from their own divine nature, especially that. Because I kept looking for the problem at the level of the personality, and I kept seeing the problems ended up being symptoms of this unique and I think ultimate cause, which is I'm not powerful, I'm not worthy, I can't do this, I can't do that. A lot of negative self-talk. I call them people's negative mantras. They run them in their heads all the time. And why? Because they don't know that they are actually spiritual beings having a human experience. Mm-hmm. Chardin said that, the great philosopher, and I think he was spot on. It's exactly the case. As long as we think we're separate from each other, then we can harm other people, thinking all we have to do is get away with it. Mm-hmm. But if we knew that the other was a part of us, we would think twice before harming them. Mm-hmm. This includes not just other people, but animals, the earth itself, our environment. We're all connected. We're all interconnected. And that interconnectedness, Einstein was very clear about that. And he said at one point that we're all part of the universe, he said, but we see ourselves as separate from it and from each other. And he said it's a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Yeah. I love this. An optical delusion. Your eyes lie to you, in fact, saying that you're over there, I'm over here. That's not really the way it is at the quantum physical level, at the particle level of consciousness, energy level of consciousness. No, there are connections between all of us and everything else on the planet. If we could see that, then I think the illusion of separation would be over. Mm-hmm. But quantum physics is a little hard for most people to understand. But if you can understand that all the great, really long-lasting religions had at their base at some point or another the sense that we're all connected. Mm-hmm. And then some of it ends up being exclusive, where one religion wants to argue their religion is better than another religion and all of that. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing and different conclusions that people draw. What you said earlier, you said, well, okay, it's kind of a disease, this illusion of separation. And I say, yeah, okay, I could agree with that, but I would add this definition. It's a disease of perception. Mm-hmm. It's not an actual physical disease, but because we distort, and we believe the distortion our eyes give us, that you must be over there, I must be over here, therefore we're not really connected. Mm-hmm. I think that's the problem. And the good news is the cure is to re-perceive
Yes.
reality. When I understand and then have not only my conscious belief from a book I read or somebody that inspired me to understand things better intellectually, but my subconscious mind has that same awareness, that same spiritual knowing, then I start behaving automatically, at least 95 to 99% of the time, as I mentioned earlier in our first segment. Your actions and thoughts are derived from your subconscious mind, not your conscious mind. So why not take the wisdom you possess, download it to your subconscious mind, and print it out automatically? Instead of making life a day-to-day struggle, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of the divine.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, most people don't even realize that they have a filter in front of their eyes that conditions their perception of
Huh?
what, of what in essence, the universe is neutral. It's not, bad or good or red or green or, the fact that our perception is so fundamental to the experience we're having. And so that's why it's important to actually connect with a higher wisdom, because it's not something that you may choose to do if it is that things are going bad in your life. No, it's right the opposite. Things are not working with your life because, your perception is so blurred. It's so basically limited. And all the possible wonderful different outcomes and possibilities you would have access if your channels of perception were clear, shall we say. Would you agree?
Yeah, sure. I think that's really important. And I think the big deal is we've been trained culturally to look for answers outside of ourselves. We'll go to experts, we'll go to somebody else, we'll read a book, we'll go to the guru, we'll go to somebody saying, tell me what to do. Whereas, in my opinion, guru, the definition of guru is in its spelling. G-U-R-U.
Yeah.
G, you are you. It's inside yourself.
G, you are you.
Out there is inside. And once you start to cultivate that fact that you have all the answers you need and they're inside you, the exact opposite that society has told you, the exact opposite of the training and the cultural programs we've received, then you start to go inside where the true answers are for you. They're not, my answers are not necessarily answers for you, they're answers for me. And so as we go in and find our divine expression, our divine well of truth and guidance in ourselves, and when we realize that that is where the truth is for us, that is our spirituality, then we behave from there. And if all of us realize we were all connected, my bet is that 99% of the cruelty and all of the horrible things you see happening in the world would disappear practically overnight. There would be no more war because you're bombing yourself. You're killing yourself. It's an aspect of your own being. It's like we're cells in the body of an entity. You kill half the cells, the entity dies. Then everybody dies. So we must live with this awakened, energetic, quantum physical fact that we are connected, that we are all part of a larger organism. I call it the mind of God. So we're all part of it. We're all a thought in the mind of God. We're an individual expression of the divine on this planet. All of us, all races, all people, all things, including all animals, including the earth itself, Gaia, our mother, our love of our life. It should be, because this is where we get all our sustenance. Without the planet, we have no way to live. So we're an extension of nature. We're not separate from nature. And if you look carefully at the way nature runs this planet, the wisdom of the divine is printed out in I call them the principles of nature. And I've identified some of those are in fact, 11 key principles are identified in the Psych-k basic workshop. And that's so people have an understanding of the wisdom of our mother, our nature itself, and our divine essence here. And if we just looked at what nature does to run a planet, multitasking is, that's the greatest gift. But there are millions and millions of species of animals on the planet, and somehow they all work together. How is that possible? I'm just saying, it's right there in front of us. The answers are, you reconnect with those principles, and you look at that as the original instructions that nature gave us to live in harmony with each other and the planet. You know, my dear friend Dr. Bruce Lipton, who wrote several books, one of them is called The Biology of Belief. And Bruce talks about in that book how we met and why we ended up working together for nearly 14 years. Brilliant, brilliant man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, he said from the very beginning when I first started working with him, his core message was, Rob, what really has gone wrong here, stepped away from the wisdom of nature, and we're trying to decide how to live life better than nature set it up. And there's where we got the problem, right there.
Yeah. Wow. This has been amazing, Rob. This is, oh my God, I feel like I would like to do so many more interviews with you. This has been profoundly inspiring. And hey, I can say for myself that I have been I would say a mystic and I've been a searcher for all my life. And the secret to actually being able to realize that we are not victims,
Right. Right.
that we are not victims and that we are part of this, wave of awakening right now that is calling us to a new momentum and to empower ourselves to actually make the changes that we know we need to do, that we
Right.
felt we needed to do for so long. It's a very important thing for all of us. I would say on an individual level and on a collective level as well. And thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for having facilitated, the transmission of this knowledge to the planet and to us at this point in time, and to continue to be this lovely, humble, loving, open person that you are. That's
all I can be is who I am.
yeah.
Somebody else a long time ago, and so it's what you see is what you get. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of these ideas with people that for whom it might make a difference. They might understand their situation and that they're not powerless in it, not at all. When you get your own consciousness act together and you can print out your wisdom, you become the change you seek. That affects other people in consciousness that you'll never meet or never see in your life. You don't have to. It's a closed system. We are all interconnected. So every thought you have is essentially a vote into reality about how you want things to be. That's why managing your thoughts by managing your beliefs, which create the thoughts,
Yes.
is a huge, powerful gift. And I'm so grateful to you first for giving me something that I can do that seems to matter in the world for the last, 7 years now.
I know. Anyways, thank you so much. I would love to have you back in the future so that we continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
And to all of you that watched today, Wisdom Chats, I hope you have enjoyed this wonderful conversation I had with Rob Williams. You can easily Google Psych-k on the internet, psych-k.com. There is a whole lot more of information and details there, including courses and workshops that are available throughout the world. Now Psych-k is being taught in many countries across the world, even though Rob likes to say that he likes to handpick his instructors, and it's true, because the whole idea of personal intention and wholeheartedness seems to be like the most important thing in everything that Rob does, in which I totally love and appreciate. So anyways, thanks again for watching, and I hope you to see you in our next episode of Wisdom Chats. So I'm Susie Verde, and you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.